Have you ever had a conversation that changed your life? I have. And this one conversation, in fact, just two sentences in this conversation, fundamentally changed my approach to leadership and to delegation in particular. It all happened about 15 years ago. I was working for a visual effects company and leading a small team of creature riggers. If you're not familiar, creature rigging is a very niche role in a niche industry. We built the computer graphics equivalent of animation puppets for creatures and characters that you see in movies and TV shows. It's a combination of creative and technical skills to create complex mechanical and mathematical solutions to represent the organic motion and subtle anatomy that makes pixels on a screen appear so real and lifelike that they elicit an emotional connection and response from the viewer. And we package up all of the thousands of moving parts so that they seamlessly work when an animator interacts with a simple control interface. In short, it's not easy. There were very few people around at the time with this specialist experience. And although I had been specializing in this kind of work for several years by then, my team at the time was much less experienced. Some of them had worked in other departments. And for some, it was the very first film they'd ever worked on. But that was okay because the sci-fi horror film that we were working on was relatively small in scope. At least it should have been. But the filmmakers had made a bit of an error of judgment. They thought that they could do about 95% of the creature work in the film practically, meaning using animatronics and puppets and stunt people running around in rubber monster suits. But what was supposed to be a horror film was starting to look more and more like a comedy. So week by week, as they shot the filmmakers asked us to step in and fix it. And in the end, almost every practical creature in the entire movie had to be digitally painted out and replaced by creatures that we had created. In short, both the volume and the complexity of the work that my inexperienced team were tasked with grew by many, many multiples. It was some of the most complex and challenging work that I had ever done, and I was up for the challenge. But the majority of work was far beyond the capability of my team. So the only option I saw available was to take on more and more of the work myself. And the amount of work that was on my shoulders was increasing and increasing, and I was falling further and further behind schedule. Eventually, the head of the studio took me aside one day and said, "This isn't working." He said, "It doesn't work for you because you're on a path to a nervous breakdown. It doesn't work for the project because you're a bottleneck. You're falling behind schedule and holding up all of the departments downstream from you." And he said, "It doesn't work for your team because you don't trust them. So you're not giving them the opportunity to learn. And it doesn't work for the company because you're now the limiting factor on how much creature work we can take on as a company." And that by far the easiest and most obvious thing that he could have said to me was, "You need to delegate more of your tasks to your team." And if he had told me to do that, I would have tried. But the moment any of them hit any difficulty, let's be honest, I would have just reverted back to taking on the work myself. So here's the genius 2 lines he actually said. "From this moment on, you are no longer allowed to assign any of the tasks to yourself. If you don't trust any one of your team to do what you can do, it's now your job to get them there." And it wasn't a request. It was a very direct order. There was zero wiggle room in the instruction. He had the objectivity to see that maintaining the status quo and continuing on our current path would have led to failure. And despite already being behind schedule, he saw that the only way to take 3 steps forward was by first taking 2 steps backwards. Most importantly for me, he saw that the most valuable way to leverage my knowledge and experience was actually to block me from using it directly, and instead to redirect the knowledge and experience that I had into growing the capabilities and capacity of the whole team. So The next few weeks were a nightmare. We fell even further behind schedule. But after a few weeks, we started catching up. And by the end of the project, the team was firing on all cylinders. They absolutely knocked it out of the park. And our work on that film was shortlisted in the Visual Effects Society Awards as one of just 4 nominations for the best animated character in a live action movie that year. Over the next few years, the complexity and volume and the efficiency of the creature and character work that our little team was able to deliver continued to grow exponentially, really cementing the company's great reputation with our clients. And I believe that so much of the reason for that growth was because I continued to not be in the weeds doing the detailed tasks. I could amplify the impact and effectiveness of every one of my team members by being available to support them and by better managing all of the relationships with other departments, building trust and collaboration and supporting the flow of information. And I could work with the technology teams to plan and look ahead, building all of the tools and infrastructure that would further improve the quality and efficiency of our work over the next few months and years. Most importantly, that inexperienced team, the members of that inexperienced team, have since gone on to create some of the most memorable creatures and characters in movie history. And they've led their own teams, won awards, and some have launched their own companies. I'd like to think that I was a damn good creature rigger back in the day. But I hope that I learned to become an even better leader and manager. And I know how fortunate I am because the shift in how I approach delegation came out of such an extreme situation on that project with an inexperienced team and a scope of work that grew so much. And I'm so grateful that I had a manager at the time who was prepared to take a bold risk on me. That risk paid off, and it showed me without any doubt that even if I'm the most experienced person on the team, I have far more impact when I create the conditions for other people to succeed compared to if I try to do too much myself. So I need to end this by saying a huge thank you to Jason Dowdswell. That conversation didn't just change the project, it changed my career and continues to have ripple effects today as I support other leaders, especially those who come from a specialist background, to address concerns around trust and to dial down that need to prove themselves as the expert and to dial up the impact that they have by getting the best out of their whole team.